pledge and prayer.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, our rock and our salvation, we beg you to pour out your Holy Spirit upon our fractured nation. Heal the divisions that separate us and remove all obstacles to authentic unity. May you guide this great country of ours and lead our citizens to embrace one another as neighbors and fellow countrymen, created in your own image and likeness. Give us a fresh opportunity for renewal and true solidarity for the common good of our homeland. May we return to our true identity as a people of faith and charity. Help us to always remain one nation under you, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Amen.
Okay, I know we have a couple of new visitors here today, so I'd like those people to raise their hand. There you go. They're from our church. They're also dog handlers. They handle the comfort dog with Katie and I from the Lutheran Church. Did I miss one?
Right here.
Oh, okay. Great. Good to have you, and I hope you'll enjoy the meeting, and we'll be coming back. Okay. Really don't have a lot of announcements today, but I want to introduce Alan Wagner, Loudoun County Veteran Officer. He is would like to speak to us for a little bit.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Alvin Wagner. I'm the Loudoun County Veteran Service Officer. I had the privilege this week of meeting one of our veterans here, one at the camera, and his wife. We had a bit of a gap in our office this year. I just kind of got converted back in June. Moving forward, my hours are Monday through Wednesday, 8 to 3, Thursday, 8 to noon. I'm only allowed 30 hours a week. My assistant only gets 20. We're pushing hard to get ourselves both full-time, and hope by the end of the year, or at least a year now, we're both working 40 hours a week. We got 5,000 veterans in this county. I got records on about 1,200 of them. I need to get the word out to the rest of them. If you're a Vietnam veteran, you need to come into my office. Blue Water's been approved. If you spent one day in country Vietnam, please come into my office. If you're the spouse of a veteran, please come into my office. Bring me your DD-214. Don't let me deal with the spouse having to come in and ask me, what am I eligible for after my husband passes away? Because I don't know if I've ever read it. You know where I work? I got a bunch of business cards up here. I may not know where I work. It's at 100 West Broadway in the Rowan University. In the Rowan University building in the Lower City Library. I'm there to help the veterans. I'm a veteran myself, 24 years Navy. Pleasure meeting you all.
How many veterans do we have here? Raise your hand. Look at that group. So we got all these people that they in our senior that needs to come by the office. So do that. The veterans have done wonders for me. So I really hope that you will take and use the opportunity to get whatever services are able to be provided for you. Don't forget to go to our CrossCountyPatriots.com website and look at what's going on there. And Katie's going to pass the basket around. That helps with the donation. That helps us keep the Tea Party going. We buy literature and do a whole bunch of things with the money that you provide to us. And also it helps us keep the website up and our version. There's all kinds of things we have to do with that. Okay, Ray, you're going to be coming up and talking about the Constitution or
okay, for those of you who are new, every meeting that I'm here, I try to do a topic on the Constitution. Just to make sure everybody knows what it says, so we don't get fooled. Today I'm going to talk about national debt in the Constitution. Last month, with the help from the President, Congress raised the debt ceiling again. Again. You probably voted against that. I voted no. Okay, good. Now, the question is that a good or a bad thing? Some say it's good because, oh, we have to fund our government. So let's explore a little bit about what's happening with our national debt. First, as always, I always ask the question, is it constitutional? In other words, does Congress have the authority to get us in such debt, to keep raising the debt ceiling, that have this tremendous debt that we have? Yes, no? Well, normally when I ask that question about something the government is doing, the answer is no. Unfortunately, today the answer is yes. Again, let's look at the Constitution and see exactly what it says. Go to Article 1, Section 8 again, and you'll see that the very first power listed that Congress has the authority to do is to, quote, to borrow money on the credit of the United States. There's no limit set by the Constitution, so Congress could borrow potentially an unlimited amount. So it's constitutional, but the next question is it wise? All right, listen, and I always go back to the Founding Fathers, see what they had to say about it. So let's look at them. If you look at the notes from the convention, and you read what the founders said, basically they put that power in as a necessary evil to be used only sparingly and typically in times of war. Okay? Otherwise, they hated debt. So I'm going to read a bunch of quotes from the founders, but I think they're important. So let's hear what they had to say. First of all, 4 different quotes from Thomas Jefferson. One time he said, "We must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt." That's what we're doing today. In talking about problems in the government, he said another time, "The 4 horse of this frightful team is public debt. Taxation follows that, and in its train, wretchedness and oppression." Another quote. He says, "I place economy among the first and most important of Republican virtues, and public debt as the greatest of the dangers to be feared." One more from Jefferson. "I am for applying all the possible savings of the public revenue to the discharge of the national debt. But if the debt should once more be swelled to a formidable size, its entire discharge will be despaired of, and we shall be committed to the English career of debt, corruption, and rottenness, closing with revolution. The discharge of the debt, therefore, is vital to the destinies of our government." Okay, he's not the only one. Let's hear what Alexander Hamilton had to say. He said, "Nothing can more affect national prosperity than a constant and systematic attention to extinguish the present debt and to avoid as much as possible the incurring of any new debt. Establish that a government may decline a provision for its debt, though able to make it, and you overthrow all public morality. You unhinge all the principles that must preserve the limits of free constitutions. You have anarchy, despotism, or what you please, but you have not just or regular government." George Washington said, "Avoid occasions of expense, and avoid likewise the accumulation of debt, not only by shunning occasions of expense, but by vigorous exertions to discharge the debt, not throwing upon posterity the burden which we ourselves ought to bear. The progressive accumulation of debt ultimately endangers all government." And notice he equates debt as a burden on our children and our grandchildren, which is true. James Madison said, I go on the principle that a public debt is a public curse, and in a Republican government, a greater curse than any other. John Adams, he said, the consequences arising from the continual accumulation of public debt in other countries ought to admonish us to be careful to prevent their growth in our own. And perhaps one of the most profound statements comes from Benjamin Franklin. He says, when you run in debt, you give to another power over your liberty. Franklin's establishing a direct connection between debt and liberty. The more debt, the less liberty. Notice that they all equate large debt to immorality and the results of, and which will result in anarchy and revolution. Is anybody in our Congress and administration today listening to our founding fathers? No one quotes that anymore, do they? Where did the founding fathers get these ideas? Common sense for one, but of course they always look to the Bible. Proverbs 22:7 says, the borrower becomes the lender's slave. And they knew that. They understood that. So, in my opinion, our national debt is a bad thing, a very bad thing. As of June, it was over $22 trillion. Now, what's the cause and what can be done about it? Contrary to leftist propaganda, it's not because of tax cuts. In the 2 years since Trump's tax cuts, federal revenues have increased slightly, but they've increased, not decreased, like the leftists say. But you look back at, into the decade of the 1980s during the Reagan tax cuts, and the left will always point to that and say, oh, look at all the federal debt we got because of those cuts. Well, the reality is those federal revenues in the 1980s per year climbed from $600 billion to over $1 trillion per year. Okay, so clearly tax cuts are effective and are not the problem. It's just like in our family budget. It's not how much you make, it's how much you spend. If you continue to overspend, you're going to be in trouble. And Congress consistently spends more money than they take in. That is not sustainable. So why do they do it? It's not sustainable. They know it's not sustainable. Well, several reasons for that. First, we the people don't make them balance the budget. Because we're happy to pass the debt on to our children when we get more stuff, free things from the government. Well, that's immoral, as our founder said. Second, Congress uses the excuse that their hands are tied. How are their hands tied? They say, oh, we have all this mandatory spending that we have to do, and all these so-called entitlement programs. Well, let's look at entitlements. These include all the socialistic programs of the government, to include Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, welfare, food stamps, subsidized housing, etc. Now, are any of these programs constitutional? Oh, absolutely not. And I won't get into detail. If you heard me before, I've gone into this several times. But trust me, there's nothing in the original intent of the Constitution that allows any of those programs at all, period. So, yet, we are content to bankrupt our country over these unconstitutional programs. Currently, 60% of the national budget goes to these mandatory spending programs. 60%. 10% of the budget goes to paying down the debt, or paying the debt, which leaves only 30% for so-called discretionary spending, to include the entire defense budget, which is the main thing our government's supposed to be doing anyway. We will soon get to the point where 100% of the budget is required for these unconstitutional programs, or else we'll just go into further debt, etc., etc. That is unsustainable and also immoral. So clearly, we need to change our attitude towards these entitlement programs, as our founders predicted. We will dissolve into anarchy and civil war. Now, most of us in this room are probably receiving Social Security and Medicare. Now, we should not really be content with like, oh, I got mine, let the young worry about theirs. We need to be pushing, because it's mainly our generation's political lobbying that says, oh, you can't touch Social Security. Well, what it needs to be done is gradually eliminated. Obviously, we can't cut people off cold turkey that have been paying into it for 40 plus years or whatever, and they're depending on it now. Okay, but if we don't change things, the country's going bankrupt. So we need to start a slow, gradual elimination, so that the younger generation doesn't feel like this is deserved. We do it because. If you know anything about the Social Security taxes that you pay, does it go into some big pot that's being saved? No, it's spent. Okay? So put everything in the regular budget and let's start gradually eliminating it and get rid of it. Not on Social Security, but all these programs. Again, they're totally unconstitutional. And what Social Security is the government telling you you're too stupid to prepare for your own retirement. So we're going to do it for you. We're going to make you do it. And oh, by the way, we're going to do it very poorly, with a whole lot of waste, 10 times worse than you could have ever done it yourself. But we're going to make you do it. Is that a good deal? No, it's not a good deal at all. So to conclude, our government needs to quit trying to be the nanny state and go back to the original intent of our Constitution. Questions or comments on that? How many amens? Question? Question, comment?
Over in the back or left-hand side. Got his hand up.
How does immigration fit into that situation?
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other story we don't have time to go into. But obviously, there's way too many, quote, immigrants that go immediately on to some of these welfare programs that is also bankrupting the country.
92.1% of the Muslims that are brought into this country are on welfare. Not to mention other programs. 92% of the Muslims that have been brought over here as refugees are on welfare. Free housing, free food, free everything. If you can get One American News, they keep counting, and you can get it online, oann.com. They will show you exactly how much per day, per month, and per year in billions that we are spending and taking in all of these illegals and all of these other refugees. Yes. If you can't get it, you can only get it through DirecTV. The other cable company will not carry it.
It's now available online, 24/7.
Yes, they just did that.
I'm actually encouraged because all this deficit spending propensity we have is enabled by our central bank and their incestuous relationship with the Treasury. And I'm so pleased to see that our president has hanging in his Oval Office a portrait of Andrew Jackson, who claimed that his claim to fame was, "I killed the bank."
Okay, and Bob, you want to introduce Tim?
Yeah, tonight I have the honor of introducing to you our Congressman Tim Burchett from the 2nd Congressional District. Those of you that kind of regular to our meetings, you probably noticed that Tim's already been here about 3 times already. And we plan on getting him back at least once a year to let us know what's going on in Washington. So, Tim, you got the microphone.
You're talking about the deficit and the spending. I was looking at a tweet I put out 4 days ago, and it said, I wish someone in either party would talk about the budget and our massive deficit. Anyone question mark. 90 comments, 66 retweets, and 720 favorites. It tells you pretty much. We've got 35,000 followers, but they're not all. A lot of them are my enemies. That's all right. People respond to that knucklehead? And I said, man, don't give them air out of a jug. What do I care about what somebody in New York City thinks about me? I don't. It's a pleasure being here with y'all. I'm Tim Burchett, I'm your congressman. I'm going to speak briefly and then I'll answer some questions. This is Andrew Davis over here. I call him the Cub. He's going to start. He does not work for my congressional staff. This is a political event. He is, I'm treating it as that, even though I am your congressman. He'll be working in my campaign again full time here shortly. We take our campaign seriously, as y'all can imagine. There's only two ways to run. That's scared and unopposed. I had the great fortune the other day of, you get called to the White House occasionally. I guess they said summon. And the lady that works for me, she worked for Congressman Duncan's schedule, and she said, "You've been summoned to the White House." And I'm like, really? What about? You know, I'm in trouble. You know, and I might have heard something I said about raising the debt ceiling or something like that. And so I go to the White House, and it takes the better part of the afternoon when they call you to the White House, because it's an event. You know, it's just an event. And you go through the security, and we're whisked through there. So I get in there, and it turns out President Trump's honoring Roger Penske and the folks from NASCAR, which is pretty cool. You know, I'm a gearhead. I collect old motorcycles. I got a few old cars I'm monkeying around with there in the yard. And so I'm up there, and one of his staffers is there, and he's asking some question, and nobody knows the answer. Of course, me being a redneck, I didn't know, and I was pointing some things out to him. And so I go grab my seat, and I'm on the second row, and then, you know, they start, and I look over there, and there's Secretary Cho, I can't remember what her name is. She's in front of me, Secretary of Transportation on the front row, and I'm on the second row, and I look over to my left, and it's all the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate, you know, and then over here to my right is all these good old boys from NASCAR, and they're just soaking it up. And around the perimeter is tourists that are just either fortunate or misfortunate of being there during one of these events. And then you know, we're standing there, we're sitting there, and everybody says, "Well, let's get a seat." So I go grab my seat, you know, and they start playing, you know, dun, dun, hail to the chief, dun, 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 ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, you know, walks in, and we're in the Rose Garden, sun's shining, everybody's clapping, and, you know, President Trump is classic Trump. He says, "Hey, it's great to be here, my buddy Roger Penske, and all these NASCAR guys." And, you know, he introduces the new guy who just won NASCAR this year, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "wasn't your wife with you a minute ago?" And, you know, and his wife's sitting out in the crowd, and he says, "Get her back up here," you know, and then the Secret Service is like, you know, one of our guys up on the front row lowers the little chain link thing right there, and she goes up there and stands with him, and he says, "Hey, I got Roger Penske here with me, I got my buddies from NASCAR," and he goes, "and I got some of my friends here from Congress." And I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to go on forever, with all the leadership. The first name out, he goes, "Hey, where's my buddy Tim Burchett?" Yeah, whoa. I think there's one of those deals, somebody step out of the bushes and goes, "Gotcha," you know, and I'm like, some crazy TV show, you know, and the president's in on it, which wouldn't surprise me. And so, and I'm thinking, what in the world? And I'm on the second row, right? And so we're still standing. And so I just go like this. I just kind of lean over like this. I go, "Right here, Mr. President." And he says, "Hey, there's my buddy Tim." And he goes, "You know something about this sport, don't you, buddy?" "Yes, sir." And all I could think was, now everybody in the country knows what the 2nd District knows, that the 2nd District is represented by rednecks. Very gracious, you know, and I mean, he's classic Trump, you know, and after it's over with, you know, we all usually just kind of mill around, but as I said, his president, that guy, Donald Trump, and he says, "Hey, I'm my buddies from NASCAR," and you can see the wheels turning in his head. He goes, "Y'all want to come up and see the Lincoln bedroom?" And they're like, you know, they're a bunch of rednecks. They're like me. They're like, "Heck yeah, I want to see the Lincoln bedroom." That goes right. And then he goes, "Hey, all my buddies from Congress, y'all come on too." And then you see Secret Service just looking at each other, and they get on there and they go, curveball, curveball. So they actually have a word for it, because President Trump just wide open. And I was talking to someone, and they just said, you know, brother, I mean, this is kind of off the record, I probably shouldn't say this, but every goddamn one of them I talked to said, we love him. We just love him. And I thought that's pretty cool. And he was sitting there, and he was in the Lincoln bedroom, and he said something about, he goes, yeah, Abraham Lincoln. He says, he's 6'5" and 18 whatever year, and he goes, that's like 7 foot now. And he says, what else did he say? He said something about, he's sitting there thinking, how do I kill Robert E. Lee? How do I, classic Trump. And so anyway, that day went on pretty good. That knocked it out. And I walked out, and I do one of my classic videos, and I think I did one with Jim Jordan that day, and we had a lot of fun. And another time I was, and honestly, these are all true stories. I don't take myself serious. I take the job very serious, because I think you can go crazy up there. I don't drink, and I don't smoke crack cocaine, so that's really about the only relief I think you can have up there from that craziness. So I'm in this meeting, and and I look out, and I'm out in front of the Capitol meeting with a group of kids, getting our picture made like you do. And if y'all heard my King of Jordan story, if I've told you this, I know a couple of y'all heard it, but anyway, so there's 15 Suburbans out in front of the Capitol, and I'm like, what the heck is all this? I'm thinking 15, that's usually the number of the Vice President Pence. He's really a cool guy. I mean, we couldn't be more blessed. I mean, he is, I feel very firm that he is a fine Christian man, and he is a very, if you were meeting one-on-one, you'd think after you got over the initial shock that you're talking to the Vice President of the United States, you'd say this guy's just a regular guy. I mean, you can tell, and I feel like God has him in that position for a very, very good reason. And so, anyway, I was wrong. It wasn't the Vice President. It was actually the King of Jordan was there. Now I serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee, so I go back to my office, and they say, hey, you're supposed to be up there at the Capitol. And I was like, oh man, what for? And they said, the King of Jordan's up there. And I was like, I don't go to that. And they said, no, you need to go. You're on Foreign Affairs. You're one of the young freshman members. So dadgummit, I go to see the King of Jordan. And I'm standing there, and I see him over in the corner. And so he's friendly to us, and he's not trying to wipe out Israel as we know it. So we have a great relationship with the King of Jordan. His wife is American. I believe she's American, educated here. He's educated here too. He's just a super nice guy. And he's standing over in the corner. He's got these huge Middle Eastern security details you can imagine. I just remember them because they all had this little red dot on their security. I guess that was their sign for the security pin. This is my congressional pin, but they had this little dot. It was red, I noticed, and they were huge. And I walked over to him and I said, hey, King, I'm Tim Burchett. He said, where are you from, Congressman? And I said, well, I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. He says, Knoxville, Tennessee. He goes, wow, my wife and I love Gatlinburg. I was like, I could just see the King of Jordan standing on a street corner in a muscle shirt, eating a candied apple, and his wife's got an airbrush tank top that says, I was stupid on it. Never did do that. So I'm recognized, to speak finally, and the chairman's like, he's a nice fella. He's a Democrat. He's an older gentleman from New York, and I always cut up with him about my accent. I know you think I'm from New York, but I'm actually from Tennessee. And he loves that. He wants me to come up there and eat pizza with him sometime. I told him I don't like going anywhere they don't let me carry my pistol. So I don't know. I said, you make some arrangements before we go to New York. So especially now. So finally they recognized me, and I'll tell you, every question, everybody started out, King, we're so honored you're here, and please send our best to the Queen, and all this glowing stuff. And I'm thinking, dadgummit, I'm an American. We kind of got away from that King thing, had a little revolution over some of that stuff, the price of tea, I believe it was, but got away from those cats over there. And so I said, King, as you know, I'm from Tennessee. I said, the closest I've ever come to royalty was my buddy Sid Blaylock. Got my wife and me to meet Dolly Parton one time. and he goes, everybody take a whooping right here in that Capitol. I could probably knock on one of them, but I'd say the other 12 would have their way with me. So the king kind of looks back, and then he just busts out laughing. Wow! And then you see all the security guards go, wow! They all laugh. The king laughed, you know. And then everybody laughed. Well, I mean, for about a week later, C-SPAN, CNN, Fox, did Tim Burchett really ask him, really compare him to Dolly Parton? And I never got one negative phone call off that. That's true. Like I said, I don't take myself serious. I think God has blessed me with a lot of things. He's blessed me with a wonderful wife and a daughter. And He's given me a little bit of a sense of humor because I don't have the intellect that some of my colleagues do, obviously. But I take it with a grain of salt, and that keeps me from going crazy, because it's not, what's going on is crazy up there. It is total bedlam. First 8 months of Congress, under the Democrat leadership of Ms. Pelosi, we've really accomplished nothing. We've accomplished nothing. But thanks to our president, I feel like we have a booming economy with outstanding job growth and low unemployment. Our minority hires, minority folks working now is higher than any point in recorded history. Even though things are going great, I feel like some of our liberal friends across the aisle, and some Republicans, honestly, are embracing socialism. We should be very concerned. I think that's frightening, folks. I believe in capitalism. I'm not afraid to say it. I think that's something we've gotten away from. A lot of our young folks today, they're afraid to say they're a capitalist. There's nothing wrong with a profit motive. I think if you raise a profit, you can put a heck of a lot more in the offering plate. I'm not one of those evangelist types that believes in success, Christian successfulness or whatever. I think, prosperity, I'm not really into that, but I do think that we're given more, more we're given, the more we're expected out of us. You just got to look at that crazy Green New Deal and see what's going on. I mean, I get asked why I'm not supporting it by university professors. This isn't on my notes, but the lady who's our new chancellor at UT, I said, I know you want to say you got diversity at UT. I said, but dadgummit, how many Republicans are in your socialism department? I mean, sociology department. Sociology. That was very Freudian of you. Freud was a nut. But, and I actually, you're going to find this hard to believe, I talked to all those, the gang of four, I know them all. Cortez, I talked to her, she'll come sit beside me on the House floor, and then she gets up, the old timers say, you get a picture of me with her, they'll kill you back home. And then she goes and their old timers tell her the same thing. But you know what? At least she admits what she is. And the rest of these cats, I don't think they know exactly what they do. I'd like to beat her in the next election. I don't think we will. I think all we're doing now is making a martyr out of them. I've told our folks, let's ignore them. Let's just ignore them. And quit every time they get up. And because the press asks them for a comment on everything. And I really don't care what they think, what they care about. It has to do with the price of tea in China, as my mama used to say, because they don't affect my day-to-day life. I had a meeting with Cortez, though. I called her to my office. We met for 45 minutes, and I tried to interject capitalism into our conversation. I said, that's the president calling. I'm still glad I didn't vote for the cab increase. But I told her, I said, you want to outlaw planes? I said, I know you don't want to put carbon or whatever it is in the atmosphere you think that they're doing. I said, but you're using, it's either carrot or the stick, girl, and you're using the stick too much. You need to use the carrot. I said, right now MIT has an airplane engine, no moving parts, that actually puts no carbon. It's Buck Rogers kind of stuff. I don't understand it. I've watched this video on it several times, and I've asked to speak with somebody from MIT, but it actually moves a little glider about the length of a football field. It has no moving parts and puts no harmful pollutants, as we know, into the atmosphere. But it's probably a $1 million contraption. But as I stated, 20 years ago, your cell phone was a $100 million computer. Now, what got us to that point? I guarantee it wasn't some egghead in some bureaucrat building at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. It was some capitalist in some garage somewhere that turned the screw, figured out a transistor, did something, and figured out how to do it. And now, we have got a $100 million computer in our hands because of technology. I think because And I expressed that to her, and as we walked out, but I saw her people huddling around her saying, I think it's a trap or something, you know, and I was like, look, I explained to her recycling. I said, Knox County, 400,000 to 500,000 people that live there, it generates about one automobile tire per person per year. And you got to do something with that. You figure out something to do with that, and you will be the next, you'll be the next Gates. I mean, just figure that out. Get $1 a tire, and you just make a product with it. That's capitalism. That will solve our environmental problems. And I don't believe the environment is in bad shape as they say it is. I think when I was a kid, I've said this before, how many people are here that lived here for 30 years or so? You remember the old Roman house? Mr. Dutton, I'm sure you do. We used to go to Church Street United Methodist when they were making plexiglass. You had to roll your windows up because your eyes would fire and your nose would run, literally. You do that now, somebody go to federal penitentiary. It's not, you can see the Smoky Mountains from West Knoxville where I live. You couldn't do that when I was a kid. It is better. It is better. Yeah, it can be a lot worse. And they always try to pin me on, do you believe in global warming or not? I say, it doesn't matter if I believe it or not. I believe in the environment, and I'm an organic gardener, for goodness sakes. They came in and had this Miss Pelosi, I guess she lost a bet, and they had to have a global warming seminar in our small business meeting, which absolutely, I think it was small business, one of them. Didn't have anything to do with the subject of the committee, but they had to have a meeting there. They had to have a hearing somewhere in the science committee, which should have been the one that you would think they'd be the ones that had it. No, we had it. And I said, all you young people back here, you want to do something? I said, compost. I compost everything. I make topsoil out of refuse, things people throw in the landfill, and I educate them on. You put it in a landfill, it decomposes, takes it longer, anaerobic decomposition, the absence of air. I said, you need aerobic composition. You have the presence of air. It decomposes it a lot faster. I said, earthworms, the things that God put out there, we can use them in creating things. And I explained to her just on down the line. And so I don't know if that's going to have any effect. Probably not, but I took a shot. I mean, I'm a flagrant fence swinger. I'll swing at the fence all the time. And I talk about our military all the time. I think we need to bring our troops home. We're in over 100 young countries, and God bless our veterans. My daddy fought for his country. My mama lost her brother. Heck, my mama flew an airplane during the Second World War. I've got a cool picture of her with her little trainer airplane that she flew. They're both buried up here at Veterans, and we're indebted to them, but there's no reason we're in 100 countries right now. We need to bring those people home. Cost of wars. Let's invest that money here. Let's get our energy here. Let's get out of these crazy countries. Let's develop energy independence. I'll just quit right there. I was speaking at a AME's Island Church one time, and I had about 5 points I was supposed to speak on. I got to my second point, I got a standing amen, and I just quit right then. That's the best I was going to do at the AME's Island Church was a standing amen. But anyway, all they want to talk about is President Trump and impeach inclusion, whatever the latest is, or his grandkid pushed some kid over in the playground. Let's impeach Trump. He's causing kids to be pushed over in playgrounds. It's ridiculous. And the reason they're doing that, folks, is they don't want to address the budget. We have not passed a budget in 20 years. I asked to be on the budget committee. A lot of guys are on there because of punishment, but I asked to be on it. And I asked the tough question, can I talk about where we're at and why are we not doing this and why are we doing this and what are we afraid of? And the chairman, who is a Democrat, said the other day, I'll paraphrase it, basically, he said, we passed, I said, we've already spent about 85 to 90% of the budget already. What's the use of passing a budget at this point? I mean, it's just ridiculous. We are out of control. We are out of control. And I vote against stuff. I had a bill the other day I voted, and people say, well, Burchett, y'all just go home if you're going to be negative. Well, somebody's got to tell that come true. I voted against a bill the other day, and the fiscal note on it was $3 or $4 million. And the guy said, one old timers came and sat beside me and said, you voted against that thing, didn't you? I said, yeah. He said, why? I said, $3 or $4 million. He said, we spent that since I started talking to you. And I said, yeah, I know it. I said, $3 or $4 million is a lot of money to folks back in East Tennessee, but that's not the main reason I voted against it. if you read the bill, which nobody does because you get them right before you vote, that's part of the design too. You can always say, oh, I didn't know it was in there. It said down at the bottom of the thing, $3 or $4 million, or amount needed. What the heck does that mean? You know, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and I give her $10. I say, baby, you want to go over, here's a credit card. You can use the 10 or the amount you need. I mean, you know, and man, we got any Navy people in here? Navy? We have one Navy guy. Brother, we're giving drunken sailors a bad name. They cannot do as bad as Congress can. You know, they don't like Trump. They're not going to like Trump. Their focus groups that show that that's what we got to do. We got to rally around this anti-Trump thing. And I don't know. It just seems to me we're just wasting time, and they don't want to do anything, and they're going to ride that horse into the ground. And hopefully we'll have a majority. But I'll tell you what, if we don't, when we get the majority, if we don't do something about immigration, about our deficit, about health care, saying we're against Obamacare for 12 years or 9 years or whatever it is, and not having a plan, that is wrong. We got to have a plan. We've got to have a plan. And the plan is not just we're going to take over, because that's in D.C. that's the structure. That's the corruption of both parties. You have to raise money. You're in A, B, and C committees. I don't mind saying it. Both parties do it. I said it the other day on C-SPAN. I was surprised I didn't get a call. I think, you know, it's not like it's any secret. But to get in the A committees, you have to raise a certain amount of money for the caucus. To get in a B committee, you have to raise so much. And if you just stay in a C committee, if you don't do anything. And that's what freshmen, where all the freshmen are. So and it's amazing to me too that the budget committee is a C committee. C committee. So that is their priorities, because it doesn't raise the money and it doesn't do anything to keep anybody in power. And I've had it. You know, and people are mad about Trump and he tweets. I just don't. It doesn't affect my daily. I don't get all upset and climb up on my high horse about too much of what he says. I just know that I just look at that stock market every day, and I look at the employment numbers, and I look at jobs coming into this country versus jobs going out, and we're doing a pretty good job. You know, I've said this before, but I trust a millionaire turned politician more than I do a politician who becomes a millionaire and they're winning office. And I've stated one of the things I'm concerned about with is the budget. You know, I can tell you this: the private sector, the state of Tennessee, and the folks down here in this community do a heck of a lot better job than D.C. and balance the budget. The state of Tennessee does an excellent job, and see our state representatives coming over there. Hello, brother. See you, sir. Thank you for being here. You must not have got the memo that I was speaking, and then you showed up. You know, we haven't passed a budget in 2 decades. Democrats aren't proposing one, so I said we can't take the moral high ground. Paul Ryan, I think, you know, they say don't say anything bad about Republicans. I think Ryan missed the boat. We had it all right there. We blew it. And this country cannot stand that again. If we do, I'm afraid we will wake up one day and we will be those third world countries where you see people out in the streets rioting, the government won't, and the military is rolling in, and it's, you know, it is terrible. And as I stated, you don't do your job in the private sector, you get fired. And we should be held to the same standard. And that's why I introduced the Do Your Job Act. I said, if we don't pass a budget, we can cut Congress's pay every year. And so he said, that's a message bill. I said, no, dadgummit, you get it to the floor, and I'll vote for it. And I'll pass it if I can get it. I don't think I can get it to the floor. I don't think Pelosi will. It makes too much sense to cut Congress's budget. That ain't going to happen. And the Republicans don't want it either. Because when it boils down to it, they're in those rooms cutting the deals, and you and I are out here paying the check. And it's unfortunate. You know, I was sworn in during the longest government shutdown in our history, and the government was open, but it, you know, not because we passed a budget. We passed another CR, a continued resolution, or spending bill. It was supposed to be about the border wall. You know, President Trump asked for $5 billion for the wall. They said, we can't afford it. And then we acted like a bunch of spoiled brats, basically. We asked our ranking member, a lady Republican, how much was in that bill. And you know what her answer was? I don't know. She did not know. I turned around and walked out of that meeting. I was disgusted. I went back to my office. The night before, at 12 o'clock, Well, I sleep in my office, not during the day, but, well, maybe during the day too. I can't really lie to you. But at night, it's $2,000 a month for 500 square feet. The only people that carry a gun in D.C. are the criminals and the Capitol Police, and I'm neither one, so I feel a little defenseless, so I sleep in my office. My wife bought me a nice air mattress, and I get up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning. We got a little boot camp we do down at the gym, and it gets me going early. But he must have sold me that terrible air mattress. But at 12:01, the buzzer goes off, and at 12:01 a.m., and I look up. I remember I was in bed, and I was actually on the couch then. I didn't have an air mattress then. And I looked over and I thought, wow, I'm going to have to talk to the custodian. There must be a short, because that's telling us there's a vote going on the House floor. So, but what had happened was they brought the bill up at 12:01 and had somebody down there, I don't know who, and they brought it up. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, that bill was on our desk. Now it was I say it was on our desk, it was published, it was 1,200 pages. 1,200 pages. Now, I know we've got one attorney in here, but 1,200 pages to read in less than 24 hours was a lot of mischief. Now, if you remember, Ms. Pelosi said during, I guess when they passed Obamacare, we got to pass it before we know what's in it. Well, she passed a bill. They passed in their rules packet. It's called the 48-hour rule, where it has to be on the member's desk 48 hours before a vote. And they just violated their own rules. But you know what? We were complacent in that. We were complacent in that. When they announced that bill, they did all those canned speeches. I know you watch them, you think, wow, they're really vigorous. They're not. It's all canned. It's a complete bogus deal. You watch it, you get 15 minutes, they get 15 minutes. It's agreed upon prior to it, and then that's how they know when the votes are going to be. Because it's all just scripted. It's a bunch of garbage. And I submit to you, we ought to do a little less of that and more of voting on individual pieces of legislation. Because in that bill, you remember, as I stated, the president wanted $5 billion. We gave him $1.4 billion. There was an additional $328 billion in pork in that. I told my guys to read it, and I said, if there's pork in it, find it. The first thing one of the young guys found was $60,000 for the Department of Transportation, basically to have parties. And I stopped him. I said, stop right there. I said, what do you mean? I said, we're against it. I said, if you found $60,000, it's loaded. And sure enough, there's $65 million in there to preserve Pacific salmon or salmon. And one of my tweets, I tweeted a video out. I always do these videos right after I walk off the House floor because I'm kicked off at that point. It's raw. It's what I feel. It's not. I haven't had time to listen to some jughead in the elevator tell me how great that piece of legislation was. And I said, you could study salmon for $12.95 down here at the Red Lobster. And of course that made the news. But it upset the snowflakes, and I don't care. They're not familiar with sarcasm, obviously. I voted against it, as I said, and I'll wrap this up because I know y'all want to ask some questions or get the heck out of here before it gets dark. But I feel like we can't let these frustrations get us down. We have got to use this as an example of why we got to get. It doesn't matter if you got an R or a D by your name, but when you hold up your hand, uphold that Constitution of the United States, you ought to believe it. You ought not be a litmus test on every vote. Well, I support the Constitution. No. And I hate hearing people say, well, and some of our good conservatives want to have a constitutional convention, and I listen to that. But you know what? Our Constitution is right. It's right where it needs to be. We just got to get people that interpret it, that read it for what it is. It's not some moving document to change with the times. Like I said, I take the job very serious. Every night I go out and look at the Capitol, and I still get chill bumps. I think, there's a guy from Knoxville, Tennessee, who majored in technological and adult education. It took me 6 years to get out of college. I didn't drink or smoke pot. It still took me 6 years to get out of college. And I have a shop nature. And dadgum, I'm a congressman of the United States. And I think about my folks. I think about my mama losing a brother fighting the Nazis and her flying airplanes when she was 17 or 18 years old. I think about my daddy storming a little beach on an island called Peleliu, storming another beach on Easter Sunday called Okinawa when he fought in the United States Marine Corps. And I think about that Army vehicle pulling up to my mama's house with that star on the hood, and that officer getting out in that nice uniform telling my grandmother that her son Roy, who was too old to go, but he enlisted and they kicked him out and they called him back up, died when he was 33 years old, just outside of Normandy. I think about people like that, and I think about the people in this room, and I want you to know I'm honored, and I take the job very serious. I want to thank you all for saying.
Questions?
Thank you, Mary.
Very proud.
She said she's proud of me. I want to get that on the record. Yes, sir. My Navy man right here. I'm getting a text from my daughter, so I'm bolting. She rarely ever texts. She said she loves me. We're good.
Term limits.
I said I was for term limits till I got to D.C., and then I think we ought to study them for a little while longer. I support them. I don't think they'll ever pass. I signed on to Ted Cruz's bill. I think we gotta, I've heard him say we can have term limits every year, but if you got a group of folks, Fred Thompson said, if you got more people that are riding in the cart than are pulling the cart, you're going to have a problem. That's what we're getting to in this country. We've got to, it started in our education, I feel like. Our universities are preaching this garbage, and our other schools, this brand of socialism that we've got, and it's not free. I used to have an economics professor that said, "Tan Snapple, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch," and he's accurate.
So I have a suggestion.
All right.
First off, Congress folks only up there for 2 years. You get to work for a year, then you got to campaign for a year to keep the job for another year.
No, you campaign as soon as you get elected.
Why can't we get Congress folks up there for 4 years? And you kind of do like the military, you do 20 years, then you move on.
Yeah.
I'm not term limits, but I mean, that's reasonable, it's what you give the military, but
Sure.
that gives you the
4 and
experience you need,
6,
but
yeah.
every 2 years is ridiculous.
I agree. But it is just about raising money, and it's sickening, really, because if you don't, you get beat.
Yeah, I understand.
And that's just the name of the game. I agree with you. I like that. That might be, that gives me an idea on some piece of legislation, which always drives my people crazy. But watch the news. I think you give me a good idea on something, so we'll see what I can do with that. All right? Thank
Got
you.
one over here?
Yes, ma'am.
I have more of a statement than I do a question, but
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to tell you that when you were elected, we had a choice. We had a choice of sending another rhino to Washington, D.C. or you. And I just want to thank you for hitting the ground running.
Thank you.
One number over here.
Thank you for sending me there, man.
Yeah, Tim,
And thank you for calling me Tim. Honestly, in D.C., when they say congressman, I just keep walking because I know they're talking about some 85-year-old white guy. You're 85, no offense.
I have a lot of concerns with this red flag laws that they're talking about in Washington now. And can you give us your insights about what's really going on with this?
They've already written a bill, don't kid yourself. And they'll say we're going to do this bipartisan bill, and 95% of the people support it. 95% of the people, I doubt, have ever been polled in the history of polling. I doubt 95% of the people in this room have been polled. But I would say that, and the red flag laws are basically this, and here's how they present it. If you've got somebody who's mentally ill and has a gun, and they think they're going to cause harm, you can go to a judge and say, this person is mentally ill, he has guns, and then the police will go in and take them from him. That's the way it's presented. But let me give you a scenario that scares the daylights out of me. Say your next door neighbor is a nice lady, and she has custody of children in a very heated, and she's in a violent situation. And her husband, who's a dirtbag, but is friends with the judge, and says, hey, and he's violent, and he says, hey, she's got guns in that house, and she does have guns in that, protect her and those little babies. And so he has those guns removed from her, and then he goes in and kills her. You know, that's a scenario. Yeah, that's a 1 in a million, but I don't want that million being my sister or my daughter or my next door neighbor. And I think what we're going to have to look at in this country, and we always want to blame somebody. They blame Trump, they blame this, they blame that. We need to start blaming the individual. The individual, somebody is evil to go in and shoot up anybody. But one thing, we've had guns since the history of our country, and I'm very disappointed in the NRA because they've allowed us to. They bring in the fight to us, and they have yet to come on the offensive. I think the NRA has darkened my doors one time. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. I was a lifetime member of the NRA before I was elected, before I was in office, and that's 20-something years ago. But I think that they need to start. They need maybe stop paying their people the big money, and they need to start lobbying the legislators and start talking to the news. Yeah, the news isn't going to give them a shot. But dadgummit, I've been in those fights before. I'd rather stand up and take it than just hand it to me and me go home. And that's what they're doing right now. So if you have any control or any issues with those, or any...
And who determines who's mentally ill?
That's a good point, ma'am. Who determines that? It's a judge. It could be a judge. The devil's in the details. This is going to be a gun grab bill. Because, and to what they're doing is they're saying high-capacity mags. They're going to advance that, and I hear that a lady stopped me at a restaurant this weekend, and she was very adamant about high-capacity mags. She didn't really understand what a high-capacity mag was. You know, I've got my father, who fought in the Second World War. He had a little trick with his M1 when he got off the Peleliu. He had a Thompson submachine gun, and when he hit it at Okinawa, he used an M1 because it was the fighting Japanese was across the field, and Peleliu was kind of up close and personal a little more. And so he had a trick where he would tape a clip to the bottom of his other clip, and he could pop that clip out and put another one in. It just flip it, and it was like, I think, 1.5 seconds. I mean, you could just sit there, if you knew what you were doing, you done it enough. So I think eventually they're nitpicking us on these guns, and they have a plan. It's clear, and they're using people's emotions, and it's horrible, horrible what's happened. That is wrong, and those people need to get the chair. They need to get the chair, and we need to limit those people that do those horrible crimes. But they're nitpicking us to the point, I think, where these definitions that, and I've been around firearms my entire life. I don't know what the definition is of an assault weapon. I just don't. I mean, I look at my conservative attorney back here, and I would say he'd be hard pressed to say what an assault weapon is too. And weapons of war. You know, hand-to-hand combat, you're grabbing rocks and sticks. I talked to some people that have been in combat, you know, and so I just have a real hard problem with all of that. And the devil is in the details, but I'll guarantee you this, it won't be bipartisan, and they'll have so much junk in there and so much unintended consequences that would be detrimental, and I suspect McConnell won't bring it up if it gets that way. But then they put it on us to vote on it, and so they'll use that as leverage in a campaign. We did it, they do it, everybody does it. You just have to vote it up or down, and that will be a very tough vote, because the Republicans already proposed an anti-assault weapon bill.
Got one here, right here.
I'll take them all. We're good. Yes, sir.
On the lighter side, what is Pelosi like?
Pelosi. It's kind of funny. She'll walk by me, and Miss Pelosi, I think she's trying to hold on. She's just trying to hold on, because the guy, I can't remember the guy's name that's behind her that will follow her probably. Who? No, Stenny's not. He's number 2 guy, but you know, when she's gone, that whole machine will move on. It will go farther to the left, and a lot of the Democrats are hoping that she can stay healthy and be there. She's always been very pleasant to me, and she's pleasant. Gosh, when we were getting sworn in, I sat on the aisle seat, not because I thought I would get on television, because I get enough of that anyway, but I had my daughter with me, and I told this story how, you know, she came down the aisle, and Miss Pelosi stopped and talked to Isabel like 8 minutes. She had a granddaughter named Isabel, and it was kind of uncomfortable. They said, Miss Pelosi, we got to go. And she's like talking to her, and the press came to me afterwards and said, God, Miss Pelosi talked to you longer than she did anybody. What were y'all talking about? And I said, ma'am, I'm not at liberty to discuss that right now. Well, we'll give it to my little girl Isabel. When they called it, kids down there, and then and they wanted them down there, and then they said, oh, and she goes, oh, all the kids come down here. I mean, kids were coming out of everywhere. It was like this Raiders of the Lost Ark movie where all these kids were coming out of these caves that were enslaved. I mean, these kids were like, ah! And then it was just pandemonium. And so I said to Isabel, I said, baby, you want to go down there? She said, no. I said, why not, baby? She goes, I just don't think I care for that woman. I think clearly her time has come and gone. Things are happening that wouldn't have happened under her 10 years ago. The Gang of Four is dictating a lot of things. I will tell you this, though. My guys texted me from my office, and they said, what's going on? They said, Pelosi and AOC were feuding. And Cortez had a couple of bills up, and I was looking at the thing, and they were all green, and I voted red, of course. And then it looked up there and showed Pelosi. Pelosi was on the floor. A lot of times she's not there. She travels all over the world all the time. She was on a peacekeeping mission to Israel, not Israel, I'm sorry, to Italy a couple of weeks ago. I did not know we were at war with Italy, but apparently there was a peacekeeping mission there. But I looked up there, and Pelosi didn't have a light lit up beside her. And I thought, And I looked back up there, and all the Democrats had seen that Miss Pelosi had not voted. And so they all just started going from green to red, just kind of this wave, And I was kind of felt like, hey man, I'm a trendsetter. But I think she needs to step down. She needs to go. She's going to embarrass. I think she'll get embarrassed eventually, more so than the national media is going to protect her.
So you see someone farther to the left?
Oh, absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
No one back here?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming. It's great to meet you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have
You
two
pay my
things.
salary. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, I'm a newcomer, although my family settled this region. So just want to say two things. First of all, when it comes to the Second Amendment, you can tell your Democratic friends that when the San Bernardino terrorist attack happened, it happened on a soft target. They left our county building, went to the regional center, and attacked there because they knew that our sheriff's deputies, who were our security in that building, would not be available with their guns to defend our people. That's number one. Number two is entitlements.
I'll be honest with you, ma'am, I'm not so much worried about our good Democrat friends. I'm worried about some of the folks sitting on my side of the aisle right now.
Well, to the extent that we can help you with those, we will.
Yes, ma'am.
Second of all, with the entitlements, same thing happens at the county level. $6 billion budget. Only $600 million of that goes to discretionary, quote unquote, public safety. So, and that's in the county of San Bernardino, one of the largest counties in the country. I was responsible for that budget, and I will tell you that if you can find a way to put strings on those entitlements so that the governor can't give away that money to non-citizens, and I don't mind saying illegal aliens, you will put a big dent in that deficit. So anything I can do to help, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
We got one over here.
The past couple of years, we've had a lot of emails and conversations about the Convention of States.
Yes.
When you think of the inability to pass term limits, the inability to pass a balanced budget act, the inability to get any Congress to do anything that's against their cushy job, do you have any kind of an impression, positive, negative, about what the Convention of States is trying to do, and has it got the potential to be successful?
Actually, I fear it because I've gotten some legal interpretations that you can't limit the scope of the convention. Well, I'm talking to attorneys, and I mean, everybody's got an opinion, so there you go. We'll argue about that. If you could limit the scope, that'd be one thing, but you better be careful if you open that thing up. Yeah. That toothpaste not going to go back in that tube quite as easy as it came out. And you look at people that this should send chills down your back, but if Hillary Clinton had not stolen that election in the Democratic primary, Bernie Sanders would be the president of the United States right now. Just let that sink in. So, and I mean, I think our founders had a good idea with the Electoral College.
Oh, they want to get rid of it because they can't win, so now they're going to change the rules.
Sure, they want to change the rules. They want to make the Supreme Court bigger and do all that. And, you know, it's on down the line. But they can get by with it because where's it coming from? Where is the yay? You know, these Antifa folks. You know, I've got a bill dealing with them. You know, and all of a sudden I'm a white supremacist. The bill I have applies to everybody. You know, and they want to. But it's just a bad state of affairs right now.
You got another one here and another one here, and then I'll get the one.
You'll take them all. They're all fair. Don't feel like you got something you said, that guy I should have asked him that. You go ahead and ask it. Yes, ma'am.
I've got two topics. One that really concerns me greatly. Technology is my field, and watching what Google and the other companies are doing and how they're manipulating our elections by playing with artificial intelligence. And we have these hearings that you watch, and the people conducting those hearings don't have enough knowledge to ask the right questions.
And they don't have a clue. They start asking about how to program their phones. I know where you're going.
Why are they not calling in experts to help them pose those questions to know what's going on, because they don't have a clue. And we may be in for a rude awakening when it comes time for the election with what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Oh yeah, I think they know how to manipulate that kind of thing, and we don't have any news sources anymore, as I've stated. You know, CNN, if they ever put me on there, I hope they insult me, and I'm going to say, and that is why there are more people watching a rerun of Finding Bigfoot than are watching the show. Because, you know, it's just not, I mean, Fox, I don't watch Fox. God gave me a wonderful brain, I think, and it allows me to figure it out. And I think that's partly by design. And I've also, here's what you got to watch though. As a libertarian-minded person, I'm very leery of putting any rules on any of that social media. And I know they manipulate the news, but you know what we ought to do? We ought to get some of our money together and form our own corporation and do it ourselves.
Exactly, because we have the talent on our
well,
side.
I think we do. I think we've got plenty of talent, and I think we could raise the money. I just don't see anybody doing it just yet. And I think it's going to, and then too, if we start putting rules on them, and then what's going to happen when they can put the rules on them? I just think as the chairman told me one time in the state legislature, I think we're getting ready to open up Ponderosa's box. Pandora's, but he said Ponderosa. He was over about $15 billion at the time, so I had to agree with it. Yes, sir. We don't open up Ponderosa's box.
One other thing is having to do with education. I am an educator.
Yes, ma'am. I have a degree in education.
Computer science and computer information systems. And I was appalled when I do teach adjunct at Rome, and the very idea that we have using our email being sent out to all the students and all the faculty about a contest on implicit bias, in other words, bias that you don't know you have, and having a contest of money and prizes, and who sponsored that I don't know, but the fact that it was allowed to go through
Well, here's something else. I'm always big on diversions. I think, we're watching this. We ought to be watching Epstein and what happens. He kills himself. Allegedly.
Yeah, right.
And, he broke his own neck, I believe, or something, pro bono. And we're not paying attention. We're paying attention, on these I don't watch that misery, impeaching Trump or whatever. And we don't focus on our school boards. We have some very liberal school board members in very red states. And folks, that's where it's happening. And you ought to be able to go to your school boards and say, hey, dadgummit, let's do something about it. The legislature, the state senate under Randy McNally, they had some problems. They didn't like UT having sex week. They didn't like it. Now say, we didn't use our tax dollars, blah, blah, blah. Well, you used your building. My money paid for that building just like yours did. And the other things, and I stated many times to the former president or whatever she was in UT before she was fired, you know, I'm paying attention. And she wasn't, and they canned her, and they ended up, they ended up getting rid of a lot of those board members, and that was probably the gutsiest move I've ever seen out of the legislature, because they're all appointed by the governor, and that's just a big coup. And I think they got a little bit of the message, but our school boards need to hear those messages too.
Well, our school boards have decided to not put their minutes and things online and close these meetings all of a sudden.
Well, that's against
And
the
that's
law.
coming up. They're working to get it legalized.
Well, you know, I fought that with our school board. They would claim they're going into executive session. And, you know, I went down and talked to the legislature about it. And back then, they didn't have the guts. I would hope maybe they've got the guts to do something about it now.
There's several of them that have done it.
You start down that slope, and let me tell you, an open government is a good government. Open it up. And I passed many laws dealing with sunshine law. Randy McNally and I did pass one for they received nationwide recognition. And I was in the House and he was in the Senate. And
Got another question?
yeah, I'm sorry. I went to preaching. There'll be a special love offering on this. Our good Baptists, raise your hand and explain to our good Episcopal friends what a love offering involves.
Don't ever lose your sense of humor.
It's
It's great. Thank you for sticking up for traditional family values. This society is going a direction that is just full of craziness and confusion, and it's costly in so many ways. I got a grab bag of things here I'll just shoot out at you. I'm a former staffer for Congressman Jimmy Quillen up in the Tri-Cities, Republican.
Sure.
News reporter. And to echo what my new friend Eva says about the bias in social media and in the media itself, it is unbelievable. And we couldn't stand to lose an election by what they're doing underground. I know that there's some sort of exemption that Google and things like that they have that does not require them to really be fair and unbiased. So something could be done there. And I know, is it Senator Josh Hawley of, is it Missouri? He is all over it. But and Ted Cruz too. But I'd love to hear what
you know, they have these hearings though, and that's great, and they'll soak up all the media. But is there any legislation coming out of it?
Right.
And you know, I've stated this many times, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody. The couple will tell you, you know, I think our attention, we want our pizzas in 30 minutes or less in this country, and that's about our attention span. And we move on to the next one, and they've got to get somebody, you know, until we get control of the House and we get somebody with some guts. We don't need any more hearings. Hearings are just a delay to get you all off topic, and the lobbyists can move in, and then we're pushed out. So I warn you about that. That's you know, that was the hot button a few weeks ago, but it sure isn't now.
something needs to be done.
I agree. I mean, you know, like I said, I don't know what it is, because First Amendment, I mean, they can say anything they want to about me as an elected official, and they have, and I really can't do anything about it. I think it was Larry Flint versus United States that decided that. But go ahead.
I'm sure we all would love your thoughts on Talib and Omar.
Yeah.
And what's going on there. And we've got a 15-year-old daughter. She goes to Bearden High School. And really being influenced to go for the socialism, free everything stuff. Your thoughts on churches needing to wake up and the deep state and them trying to steal the election from Trump.
Talib and Omar, it's a lot. I don't have 2 hours. Talib and Omar, you know, Talib is angry. I think Omar is too. Omar's a little more polished.
They're terrorists.
Well, you've got a First Amendment right to say that, man. But they were elected by their constituents, though. And so you've got to, you know, and we'll raise money to beat them, but I just go back to the fact, let's just ignore it. Let's win back the House. Let's put some real conservatives in. You're not going to beat them, I don't think. Maybe one of them we might get lucky, but the chances of beating a first-term congressman are just slim and none. You look at the statistics, and in their districts, they elected them. Cortez, I think she got elected, what were we saying, Andrew?
20,000 votes.
20,000 or less voted in that race. You know, her opponent, he was a very popular Democrat, old school party guy, you know, party boss kind of thing. And he basically, he moved him and his family to D.C. And they picked them off. They had probably, I think, 30 or 40 races, and some billionaire, I think we probably all know who that is, probably funded a bunch of those races from behind. And if you notice, it didn't get much, it should have, didn't get much in that Fox News, I don't think anybody else covered it, but they ran their campaigns, about 8 of them, out of an address on Gay Street in Knoxville, Tennessee. 8 congressional Democrats, socialists in Knoxville, Tennessee. And because I gave all that information to Scalise, and he put it out, but it didn't do much. I just thought that's very interesting. You know, they follow their dollars, but I think they're the face of the future, and they are the voice of the Democratic Party. Whether the majority of the Democratic Party, I don't know just yet. But you know, I got a lot of my Democrat friends, a lot of my labor guys, Teamsters and stuff. They think like we do, pretty much. They don't agree with the national thing. They like to hunt. They want American jobs. They drink a little beer, but they love their wives and daughters and kids, and they go to church on Sunday, begrudgingly, but they go. And you know, I think that I think we're missing the boat. I think we ought to focus on the ones we can win and ignore the ones we can't. And yeah, call them out. And they're racist. They say that awful stuff about Israel. That gun, call them out. But I'll tell you what my theory on that is, and feel free to make it your own, but I think they've looked at the numbers. I think the Jewish folks in this country make about 2%, and the others make a heck of a lot more. And that's why you're seeing, I was at APAC, and the #1 question was, why isn't Pelosi standing up for us? And I heard him talking to Democrats. And you had another question.
About churches needing to wake up.
Churches.
And the deep state.
Churches need to wake up. You know, I don't know if they were going to tax churches, but they sit on their cans and they let us, the other side sure is working. The other side sure is working. And I've been in a lot of churches, and they promote the Democrat candidates, and that's wrong. And that is wrong. You know, the separation of church and state, and they'll pierce that veil, and we're going to have a real problem in this country. I think churches have been asleep too long, and we're seeing what's coming of it. I mean, we're seeing the violence, and we're seeing the promiscuity, and we're seeing the abuse of kids, and how it's just sort of, well, it's just another one of those deals.
Gender confusion.
What the heck? You know, I got an argument. Now you got me ticked off. I was talking to this very liberal woman in my office, and she went through all, why'd you vote for this bill? You know, she had her agenda, and I suspect she was recording me, but she went through her agenda and would try to trip me up. And, you know, she asked me about a bill, and I voted, you voted against this? Why'd you vote against that? I said, you know, I don't know, ma'am. I said, I voted on hundreds of bills, hundreds of pieces of legislation. And I said, and she said, you know, this is anti-whatever, you know. And I said, ma'am, I said, you know, the Supreme Court's taking it off the plate for now, for us, you know, on the gay marriage issue, really. I said, but this transgender issue, I said, if a dude walks out of a bathroom in a dress and my little girl's in there, I said, we're going to have a problem. I said, my wife, that was one of the things I told my wife. I said, I hope you come visit me in jail, because that's where I'm going. So, I mean, I'm over it. I'm over that. That is extreme. And we're losing that battle, though, every day. Because you ask kids, young kids today, and they're not with you on that.
Got another question here.
Yes, sir.
Tim, you're a breath of fresh air, an exception to the rule, where most politicians seem to have the same campaign promise. I'll give you what you want. I'll make somebody else pay for it. But lately, we've been seeing a whole lot of that. I see these Democratic debates, and like AOC, I thought, this is our best friend. This is a shoo-in for 2020 for Trump. But now I'm wondering, to the people you deal with on Capitol Hill, how does that look? To us, I think it's absurd what they're proposing.
Yeah.
It's just so ridiculous that no one would take them seriously. And yet, we've got a millennial voter bloc that frightens me. I'm wondering how this looks to you all.
Well, the millennials don't vote. That's one thing you gotta realize, and they'll get mad when this gets out. I'm sure somebody will say, Burchett said y'all don't vote. We'll show him the next one. But the reality is they don't vote. And they don't vote. They don't, we're very lazy. But a lot of us don't vote either. And that's why we gotta get fired up. People that think like we do. Capitol Hill, I think the majority of people think the Republicans have a very good shot at taking it this time, taking it back. But as I stated, take it back for what? If we don't do the job, we're sunk as a country. We are a third world country. We will have violence in our streets, more so. We'll have riots. We'll have our economy will tumble if we do not get control of this thing.
Well, are any of your colleagues taking something like the Green New Deal seriously?
I think they laugh about it, but you laugh about it because there's a lot of folks that, and I've stated, that's why I push the other side of that. Let's look at capitalism. Let's save the environment and do it, and hire people that can help us do it. I mean, that'll increase the economy. And they're getting it in school, and the kids are like, I mean, these kids will get out here and cry. I mean, literally, because we're not taking it serious, and it's just, there again, I go back to my alma mater. I wish that they could do a little better.
But you mentioned you had chats with AOC, and I've heard when she was confronted about the cost of her Green New Deal, she said, well, we'll just print the money. Does she really
she doesn't
believe
get
that?
it. Listen, I know, that's what I keep saying, she's a delightful person, but, I sit there and, and I do my own Twitter, okay? And I take full responsibility for the misspelled words and the offense that I cause, because it's purely intentional. So they call him a bot, and that's like a fake account. It's a Rush. I don't know who it is. Some girl provocatively dressed, and she says, "Hello, how are you?" And it's usually a misspelled word. And I tweeted back at her. I said, "My wife will throat punch you." So, a couple of people know my wife and know that's true. But I don't know where was I going with that?
Tennessee Hollow. Trolling you on that Tennessee Hollow.
No, I wouldn't talk about that.
We have
That's all right. Anyway, I'm sorry. Did I answer your question, or did I give you a
You
quick
did. I threw a whole bunch of them out there.
Okay, yeah,
I appreciate it.
yes, sir, I'm sorry. I'm tired.
Agent Bar seems to be taking hold in terms of setting some of this straight from a judiciary standpoint. I'd like to hear your comments, and will we ever know what is going on with some of these investigations? Will it ever become public?
The problem is, as I go back to my statement I said to this young lady, is our attention spans don't go very far, and you're not going to get a legitimate hearing out of the House Judiciary Committee. I mean, that poor fella, that's, oddly enough, the Democrat Socialists are running a guy against or a gal against him. I'm not sure which it is, and these guys are going to have to work for the first time in 20 years. So I don't have a lot of faith in anything. And the swamp is real, and one of your questions, what's the last thing? Washington. Deep state. Yeah, I mean,
It's there.
I think it's there. I think but as Reagan said, I think it's an ingrained mentality, and I think as Reagan said, we shouldn't term limit politicians. We ought to term limit bureaucrats, because they're the ones that are running the show. I mean, I'll give you one example, like on this $330 billion travesty that we passed on our great-grandchildren to pay for, to open government back up. All the ranking members were at the meeting, the original meeting, and it was on C-SPAN. I watched about 15 seconds, and I literally about got sick, because they were like, "Oh, my distinguished colleague across the aisle, look forward to working with you," and they do all that. Well, guess what they did then? Allegedly, they sent all the members home except for the 2 ranking members, combined age about 150 years, literally, and some bureaucrats and probably some lobbyists. They came up with that monstrosity we got, and then they brought it back, and I thought we were going to have to get a so hard, I thought they could throw their shoulders out of whack. And, yeah, I just think it's alive. I think it's, I don't know if it's actually people that are pushing it, individuals. I just think it's a mindset. And we've got to clean house.
All of us have to pray for our nation.
I agree, Mary. I think it's past, it's like the opioid thing, and I get cut off every time I'm asked. I said, we can throw all the billions we want to. We're in spiritual warfare here. It is past a pinpoint presentation of where we're headed. And we have got to get control of this country, folks. And I mean, not the vessel to carry it.
We have another one back here.
Yes, ma'am.
Tim, glad to have you. I have a special personal favor.
Yes, ma'am.
There is a Senate bill. I know you're on the other side of the building there, but there's a Senate bill that will take away the ability of the big banks who are now getting pressured into anti-gun stances. They're actually stopping lending to firearms manufacturers, legal firearms manufacturers. So there's a Senate bill, it's Senate Bill 821. Senator Marsha Blackburn jumped right up as a co-sponsor on that bill. And basically what it will do is it will, if these banks with over $10 billion in assets stop lending to legal firearms companies, it will pull away from them a lot of the federal stuff that's handled for them, like the clearinghouses, like FDIC, all this stuff that they really need to do business. So Lamar Alexander is my favorite Democrat. He's just nowhere on this. I've called his office several times. Marsha's office actually called me back to tell me, yes, she's a co-sponsor. Would you mind, please, going to see Lamar Alexander and asking him to co-sponsor that bill? Because you're pro-gun, but I don't know where he is.
Yes, ma'am. I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
I won't promise anything.
On another note,
Yes, ma'am.
Marsha Blackburn is supporting red flag laws.
We're going to take one more question.
Yes.
Like,
She and Marco Rubio are crossing the state supporting it.
I want to just ask you a kind of a general question. You go to the swamp with a set of ideals and principles, and you know from past experience and all of the faith that we have in the Constitution that they work. And then you get to the swamp and you get nothing done. I guess what I'm asking is, how do you deal with the frustration? And do you see any light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, actually, I do get some things done. It's just you don't, too many of these guys worry about getting credit for it. There was a bill I had about artwork in our embassies. You know, there was a Bob Dylan piece of artwork, and I think we spent about $80,000 on it in one of our embassies. And I'm for art. Victor Ashford, he was ambassador to Poland. He brought people from Tennessee's art over there, and they have it put in the embassy. And I thought that's a very successful program. And they actually they put that bill in a bigger bill that's going to come through. So I was delighted with that. So I won't get any accolades. I'm not looking for, it's not something you run for re-election on, but it's a small victory, I think, and several other pieces of legislation I have that their other committees are looking at. So I think what you got to do though is, and that's what they want to do. You know, they want you to sell out. They want you to become part of the Good Old Boys Club. They want you to move to D.C. They want your wife to join the Bible study, and you and your daughter go to the right schools, and they just kind of reel you in. And that's what they want to do. But you know what? I got a great wife and daughter. My wife's a widow, and my daughter was born in D.C., and my wife doesn't want anything to do with D.C. And you know where I am at 8 o'clock at night? I'm not in some bar chasing some woman. I'm back in my room with my air mattress, falling asleep watching the History Channel. You send me to work, and I'm going to work. And that's what I do every day, ma'am. When I was on that miserable congressional baseball team, I got up every morning suppress us, and they do very well, because those guys, I watch those guys, and I just shake my head, because I've seen them since I was in the state legislature, and they roll in there thinking they're going to do this, and they're going to do that, and they reel them in. There was a very idealistic young lady across the aisle. I watched her, and I saw the other day, I was in a committee, and they recognized her. She is the chairman of the Special Select Subcommittee on something, something, something. She's all puffed up. And guess what? They reeled her in. They named her price. And I don't have a price. I could give a rip. I'm not up there. I don't care if the president's mad at me. I don't care if the rest of them are. Jim Jordan paid me probably the best compliment anybody could have. I like Jordan. He's a solid dude. And he'll come by and he'll, Birch, what do you think, baby? And I think it's a terrible piece of legislation. I said, good. And he doesn't, he's a member of the Freedom Caucus. And I said, Jordan, you get me for free. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I'm not a member of the Freedom Caucus. I vote more conservative than most of your dadgum members. But we have, I think, they know the price that most of these guys will pay or gals, and they reel them in. And I'm not in that game. I'm so sick of it. I just, I think about my folks, and I think about what's right. And, honestly, I'm not the best looking or the smartest or any of that up there, but I think God is, I pray about where I need to be, I pray about issues, I pray for our country. My wife asks me a lot, and I'm sorry I'm rambling, I know y'all got to get out of here, but I think it's important that y'all hear this. My wife will say, what are you thinking about, baby? And I say, I'm just thinking about where our country's headed, and I'm worried about it. And I ask God to look after us, because I think if we don't stand up, we're going to lose this whole deal. And if we lose it, we lose the world. Because this country, by and far, does what's right, time and time again. We send our men and now our women die in these wars all over the world. And there's tribute. I have an uncle, as I stated, and later McCarthy sent me a picture. He was standing beside his grave off the shores of Normandy over there. And we've got that all over the world, and we can just throw it all away. I promise you, man, I fight tooth and nail. And they like to discourage me, but I just get more fired up every day. Sorry I went to preaching. You don't need to clap. That's why we need term limits, because y'all keep clapping and we keep talking. Yes, ma'am.
We need you to get up in Congress and say what you just said, instead of us listening to the drivel that comes from AOC.
Yeah. Well, the problem is they're going to, some kid out here catches a bluegill, and they ask AOC, it's going to be the headlines in Field and Stream magazine tomorrow. And if we would quit talking about her, I think she'll end up, and I was going to say, I watched her, I watched all of them, and I do my own Twitter, and I'll look over there, and she'll be sitting right over there, and there'll be a big whopper Twitter come out. She's not doing that. They've all got, we've got our prima donnas too. They have these Twitter teams, and I'm sure they run everything by a focus group, and they know what to hit on, and we do too. And we got to get some people with some guts. That's just the bottom line, man. I'm sorry. Y'all get out of here. No problem. Did you get the ink cup?
Yeah. I want to thank you so much. You've been a fantastic representative. We can't ask for anybody better. A couple things I wanted to cover before we end. African Americans actually changed the place that they're meeting, and it'll be this is Thursday, and it's the Petro truck stop there on One Avenue is where they're meeting. Their restaurant that they're using. One Road, yes, One Road on I-40. Next meeting will be September the 17th, and we have actually Frank Fletcher back, and he's going to be talking again about EMP. And he's going to be bringing a whole bunch of things that you can feel, touch, and work with. And so I'm sure Tim will be around for a while. I know there may have been a whole bunch more questions, but we'd like to let some people go home and get there before dark. So I want to thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy the meeting and you'll come back. Thank you.
Yeah. How you doing? Just be careful of the other.
Yeah.